Hi, my name is Patrick Reagan. Part 5, NAT and Proxy, discusses network address translation, or NAT, and network proxy, which use shared public IP addresses while masking their individual identities. Network address translation, or NAT, is a network layer routing technology that enables a group of workstations to share a single registered address. A NAT router is a device with two network interfaces, one connected to a private network and one to the internet. When a workstation on the private network wants to access an internet resource, it sends a request to the NAT router. Normally, a router passes traffic from one network to another without modifying the data. However, in this case, the NAT router substitutes its own registered IP address for the workstation's private address and sends the request to the internet server. The server responds to the NAT router thinking that the router generated the original request. The router then performs the same substitution in reverse and forwards the response back to the original unregistered workstation. The router, in essence, functions as an intermediary between the client and the server. A single NAT router can perform the same service for hundreds of private workstations by maintaining a table of the address substitutions it has performed. In addition to conserving the IP version 4 address space, NAT also provides a certain amount of protection to the network workstations. Because the workstations are functionally invisible to the internet, attackers cannot readily probe them for open ports and other common exploits. Private network used in NAT will usually use private addresses that are not routable on the internet. They include Class A from 10.0.0.0 to 10.255.255.255. Class B 172.16.0.0 to 172.31.255.255. And a Class C at 192.168.0.0 to 192.168.255.255. As you can see from this figure, the internal users access the internet through the router, which translates between the internal private address and the external public address. So when the user using the computer at 192.168.0.101 goes to the internet, the packets will remove the 192.168.0.101 address and add the 180.12.18.101 address. Then, when the web servers respond from the internet, they will send to the 180.12.18.101 address. The router will remove that 180.12.18.101 address and place the 192.168.0.101 address, which gets forwarded to the client. With static NAT, every internal IP address is mapped to a unique external IP address, one-to-one mapping. When outgoing traffic arrives at the router replaces the destination IP address with the mapped global IP. When the return traffic comes back to the router replaces the mapped global IP address with the source IP address. In dynamic network address translation, internal IP addresses are mapped to a pool of external IP addresses, one-to-many mappings. When the outgoing traffic arrives at the router replaces the destination IP address with a free global IP address from the pool. When the return traffic comes back to the router replaces the mapped global IP address with the source IP address. Port address translation, or PAT, is a type of dynamic NAT that maps multiple internal IP addresses to a single external IP addresses via port numbers, many-to-one mapping. When a computer connects to the internet, the router assigns it a port number that is then appends to the computer's internal IP address, in turn giving the computer a unique IP address. When a second computer connects to the internet, it gets to the same external IP address but a different port number. Corporations and home routers will use PAT so that multiple computers and devices can use a single external IP address. In theory, you can have up to 65,535 devices using one address. However, in reality, it will be less because many times one computer may have multiple connections. A network proxy is an intermediary server or device that acts as a gateway between a client device such as a computer, smartphone, or tablet and the destination server or resource the client is trying to access on the internet or within a network. In other words, the proxy server that acts as a go-between for a user in the internet by making your request on your behalf, collects the response from the web server, and forwards you to the web page data so that you can see the page in your browser. Proxy servers are used for security, anonymity, content filtering, caching, and traffic management. A network proxy typically starts with a client request where the client sends a request to access a resource such as a website, a file, or service. The request is intercepted by the proxy server and forwards the request to the destination server on behalf of the client. When the destination server responds to the proxy server forwards the response to the client. Clients use a proxy server by one of the following: configuring the network settings or applications to route requests through the proxy, or network admin configures a transparent proxy on a router or firewall. Network proxies can serve various purposes and offer several benefits, including anonymity and privacy. Similar to a NAT server, proxies can mask the IP address of the client, providing anonymity and enhancing privacy as the destination server sees only the IP address of the proxy. Content filtering. Proxies can filter and block access to certain websites or content categories based on predefined rules. This is often used in organizations to enforce acceptable use policies. It can inspect traffic and block malicious content such as viruses and phishing sites, and helps prevent distributed denial of service attacks and unauthorized access. Proxies can cache frequently accessed content such as web pages or files to improve performance and reduce bandwidth usage by serving cached content to clients instead of fetching it from the original server every time. Proxies can act as an additional layer of security by inspecting incoming and outgoing traffic, filtering out malicious content, and blocking access to known malicious websites or domains. Proxies can distribute incoming traffic across multiple servers or resources to balance the load and improve the performance and reliability of the network. There are different types of network proxies, each serving specific functions. They include forward proxy, reverse proxy, internet proxy, and open proxy. A forward proxy is typically used by client devices to access resources on the internet. It sits between the client and the internet and forwards requests on behalf of the client. Similar to NAT, it provides an additional layer of security. Note, NAT works at layer 3 and 4, while proxy works at layer 7. You can think of NAT as a network level proxy. Application proxies understand how an application works, such as HTTP and HTTPS. Many proxies are multi-purpose proxies, such as HTTP, HTTPS, FTP, and so on. A reverse proxy sits in front of web servers and serves as a gateway for client requests to reach the appropriate server. A reverse proxy manages incoming requests from clients and forwards them to the appropriate backend servers. It can provide additional functionalities like load balancing, high availability and failover, SSL termination, and caching. It also provides security by hiding the backend server's IP address and internal infrastructure. Internet proxy, also known as web proxy, SSL/TLS proxy, or HTTPS proxy, intercepts SSL/TLS encrypted traffic, decrypts it, inspects the decrypted content, and re-encrypts it before forwarding to the destination server. This allows for inspection of encrypted traffic for security purposes. Some companies would configure a proxy server and direct all user web browser traffic to go through the proxy server. Proxy server or device provides anonymity and privacy by masking client IP addresses. Proxy server or device could monitor the websites and could be used to restrict web access that employees visit. Proxy server or device could be used to cache content, lowering overall usage. Internet proxy servers may require authentication for usage. An open proxy is a third-party, uncontrolled proxy server that is accessible to any internet user without any authentication. Unlike private or authenticated proxies, open proxies do not require username or password to use. They are publicly available and can be used by anyone for various purposes. Open proxies can be used to proxy anonymity and privacy when visiting other sites, bypass geo-restrictions since the traffic will appear to come from the address of the proxy server, circumvent internet censorship, access blocked network that would be blocked by a local network administrator, testing and debugging, and improving security. While open proxies has benefits, it also has some risks. Open proxies can be exploited by attackers to intercept and manipulate internet traffic. Since they do not require authentication, anyone can use them, including malicious actors seeking to steal sensitive information. While open proxies can provide anonymity, users should be cautious about the privacy policies of the proxy provider. Some open proxies may log user activity and share this information with third parties. Open proxies may introduce latency and slow down internet connections due to the additional hop between the user and the destination server. The use of open proxies to bypass censorship or access copyrighted content may violate local laws or terms of service agreements. Some examples of public proxy servers are shown on the screen. Remember, Network Address Translation, or NAT, translates private IP addresses into public IP address or vice versa for outbound or inbound traffic. It primarily works at Layer 3, the network layer of the OSI model. It is commonly used for internet access by multiple devices behind a router or firewall using a single public IP, such as port address translation. It works transparently to users and applications. Devices behind NAT are generally not exposed directly to the internet. External servers see all traffic coming from a single public IP address. Proxy servers act as an intermediary between the client or user and a destination server. It works at Layer 4 transport layer or Layer 7 application layer. It can cache web pages, filter content, and provide anonymity. It usually requires client configuration to explicitly route traffic through it, or the network administrator configures a transparent proxy on a router or firewall. External servers see the proxy's IP instead of the client's IP. Proxies can modify traffic, such as altering HTTP headers or caching responses. This table highlights some of the key comparisons, including both NAT and proxy allow internet access for multiple private IPs and hides internal IPs from external networks. However, NAT works at the network layer and the proxy works at the application layer. The proxy can also cache and filter content and usually requires a client-side configuration. Question: you're configuring a new router, configure ports, and allowing access to the internet. However, your users cannot connect to the internet through the new router. Which of the following needs to be configured? Answer: network address translation. When configuring a router to allow devices on a private network to access the internet, network address translation, or NAT, must be set up. Question. You're configuring your firewall using NAT with PAT. Which of the following would be best suited for the LAN interface? Answer 172.23.0.0/16, which is a valid private IP address range. Question. Which of the following would be used to filter web traffic based on content? Answer, proxy server. Question. You need users to connect to the internet, but corporate network policy does not allow direct connection. What would you recommend? Answer, proxy server. Question. Which of the following can be used to limit of devices to perform only HTTPS connections to an internet update server without exposing the devices to the public internet? Answer, allow connections only to an internal proxy server. By forcing all HTTPS connections to an internal proxy server, administrators can control and filter outgoing traffic, ensuring that only approved destinations, such as an update server, are accessible. For more information, visit these sites. In summary, network address translation, or NAT, is a network layer routing technology that enables a group of workstations to share a single registered address. A NAT router is a device with two network interfaces, one connected to a private network and one to the internet. Private network used in NAT will usually use private addresses that are not routable on the internet. Port address translation, or PAT, is a type of dynamic NAT that maps multiple internal IP addresses to a single external IP address via port numbers, providing many-to-one mapping. A network proxy is an intermediary server or device that acts as a gateway between a client device, such as a computer, smartphone, or tablet, and the destination server or resource the client is trying to access on the internet or within a network. Proxy servers are used for security, anonymity, content filtering, caching, and traffic management. Proxy server usually requires client configuration to explicitly route traffic through it, or to the network administrator configures a transparent proxy on a router or firewall. Thank you for watching this video. The next video will be Basic Networking Hardware, Part 6, NAS and SAN. If you have not already, subscribe to the Pat Has Your Back channel. Thank you.